Hello, everyone. Welcome to a very special Game Vault podcast stream here. We're going to be doing our game of the year. So I just wanted to get us in here, make sure everything is good, and then I will switch over to our guest. All right, let's do it. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
There we go.
Hello.
So, as you can see, I put their names, so in case you didn't know who they were, below them there. And everybody, a little bit coming in hot here, so don't mind the little odd croppings of different cameras here. So, everybody is here. I have video running in the background of games we may or may not talk about on here, just so you guys...
I'm definitely not talking about this game.
Yeah, so I just threw... Yeah, my game of the year stuff, I've thrown a video together, so I just cropped out like 20 to 30 minutes of it to run on loop in the background here. So enjoy that, so you're not just staring at a black screen.
Always appreciated.
Yes. So introductions out of the way here first. So up above me on the screen here is Tom, better known as Metal Militia in the chat there. One of the original three here of the Game Vault Pod. And then that way, next to him, is Jen, Roxy. Welcome back to the Game Vault.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Yeah, so got the whole crew together here, and it wouldn't be a Game of the Year podcast without our number one chatter, number one fan, Jonathan Night Duck, over there in the bottom right.
Thanks, I appreciate that. I'm very happy to get to rant about all of this stuff that I've been playing.
Same here. So we're going to start out with a very special first half here. I want to make sure we did this before if Jen or someone had to leave because of baby stuff or lack of playing new games this year, whichever was the reason. I thought it was fun because this is the first year that all three of my guests here have had to go through most of a year playing games while having a child in the house and all those new great responsibilities that come along with that. So my first question to you, and it can go around table. We'll just start with Tom and go that way. Tom, you are now on your second child over this year. Two questions for you.
Okay.
What changed? When your first child was born, in terms of your game playing habits, and did you learn any lessons and gotten better the second time around? If you know what I'm kind of trying to say there.
So gaming habits definitely changed to where I kind of end loaded my day with gaming before I could game whenever I wanted during the day or after work or whatever. But you learn to game when they're either asleep during the day or during a nap, or at night after they've gone to bed. After they've gone to bed is the safer bet because you can kind of really get into whatever you're playing and not have to worry about somebody waking up in the middle of it. But after the second one, you don't have that luxury of during the day because they will never sleep at the same time, ever. So you always have one of them awake. So all of my gaming now takes place after they go to bed because there's no other time to do it. But I did find myself, now that they're starting to sleep a little bit, even so, I'm just exhausted by the end of the day. So sometimes I may just sit with like a retro handheld or something and just sit on the couch while a podcast is playing or YouTube's in the background because I just can't be bothered to even get up and put a game in or get a controller. And those are just usually sitting near me at all times. But things to look forward to, Jonathan.
Yeah. if I can
Yeah.
go next, piggybacking off of that a little bit, one of the big things is that I find that I'm generally in one of two like moods when I do have time to play games. Either I am like I want to play something really challenging, really difficult, really get focused on something, or I have no energy for anything challenging in any way. I do not want to have to think about complicated things, and that's where, for that second bucket, for me, I usually play like visual novels or some watch things instead of and instead of playing retro handhelds like Tom was saying.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I do appreciate game developers now implementing difficulty levels that makes it easier for parents to play video games. Like Indiana Jones had like basically a you can watch this and interact a little bit. I think Final Fantasy 16 had something similar. But it's nice to see that coming around for folks that just want to enjoy the experience as opposed to, having to perfectly dodge an attack when you're half asleep.
For me, the difficulty is not that big of a concern, but the main thing is just being able to stop at like any point or having like short sessions. It's hard to play something where they expect you to play like 45 minutes or more at a time. And it's common that I've got like 30 minutes where I don't have to do anything, but there's a chance that 5 minutes into that, I'm going to have to get up and do something or help out with something or other. And so then it's very important to be able to pause or stop what I'm doing.
Yeah, and to add one more thing on to Jen's question there, you're the one that probably streamed the most out of the group here in terms of, so on top of the other two questions that I asked in terms of how habits have changed and all that, how have you sort of figured out streaming? Because I've seen you've been back more often recently.
Yeah, so with me, starting with the games, you guys know I play a lot of multiplayer type games where the matches are fairly quick, so I don't have to worry about pausing or anything like that or saving. But streaming has definitely been a challenge, figuring out when to go live. I don't have a set schedule anymore, really. I try my best to stick to somewhat of a normal type schedule. The most challenging thing for me having a son is that he is extremely attached to me. And it makes it really hard for me to step away for an hour or two to get streaming. And so Dan and I have sort of worked out a routine where we time his naps and my stream kind of around each other. So maybe a half hour before he's supposed to go down for a nap, I'll sneak downstairs, he'll eat something with Dan, and then he'll fall asleep for like an hour to an hour and a half. So I get pretty much a solid 2 hours of streaming in. But it hasn't even always been that easy.
Yeah.
When I first came back to streaming, it was like I might stream for a half hour, I might stream for an hour, like it's just kind of on the baby's time. So it's been challenging, but for me the biggest thing was getting back to streaming because that was something that I really missed. And I've been playing Dead by Daylight and Phasmo, so I can always, especially with Phasmo, I could just take a step back, sit in the van, and take care of him if he's freaking out or something. Dead by Daylight's a little different, but both of those games have been fairly easy to stream and manage the child at the same time.
Yeah, so obviously I know nothing of these situations. So that's why, for a thing like this is why we cut it down, number of games we'll talk about on here. But I know one thing with gaming is something that all of us grew up playing and or used it as a social thing with friends. Do you have any expectations for your kids going forward? Like, have you thought of a plan, or is it just let's see what they're into and just hope it's not Roblox?
I guess I'll go first. I mean, I do have a kind of a plan, but I would like to see what they're both into at first, because they could look at like the Nintendo NES game and go, that looks dumb. I don't ever want to play that. So, I just want to like start at a level that's visually appealing enough for them, but also not too difficult. So I'm sure we'll probably start with like a Switch game or Switch whatever Switch number we're at that point. Switch 2, 3, the new Switch, whatever they decide to call it. And then probably work backwards from there. Because I don't want to like culture shock them with a Super Nintendo game and then be like, what am I watching? This doesn't look like anything I've ever seen before. So start slow a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I don't have a plan really. I've thought about hoping that he would be into gaming. I don't want to incorporate him into my streams where he's on camera, but I want to kind of make my streams a more child-friendly situation so that if he's behind me playing or hanging out, it's not getting too crazy for him. But I think I see Dan more so as the one who will be introducing his first games. Like, I could see him playing Zelda with Dan, maybe some Ocarina of Time or something like that. But I'm here for whatever he wants to do. I'm happy if he wants to do anything.
For me, I don't really. I would be fine if she's not interested in video games. But the big thing for me is that it's very important to me that she have good, decent media literacy. By that, what I mean is that when I go online and I'm talking to random people, the vast majority of them cannot tell you why they like a thing. There's one example that stuck with me so much is people were talking about anime, and this one person said, "Oh, I really like such and such show," which was some like extremely generic seasonal anime that bombed and like has bad reviews, was not popular, does not I have never heard anybody say they like it, and they say, "Yeah, I really like the show for the plot." And I was like, what the hell does that mean? Because it's a generic plot. It's a generic plot in a show for children. So like, do you mean that this is a story that you haven't really seen before, that you think that it's executed really well, that you like the characters and the character development, that you like the pacing of the show? What do you mean? And just so what I want is just for her to be able to say, I like this show because the characters look neat, or I think that the fight scenes are cool. I like the cars going fast. Just having that basic level of being able of like understanding the things you consume and what you like about them is significantly above a lot of people.
Yeah. I get that completely. I mean, I struggle with that at times in terms of when I'm been writing up my game of the year stuff, trying to explain exactly why a certain game is in a certain position. You got to be more than, oh, it was fun, So I completely get that. So wrapping up this segment here, the final just question and thought that I had for you guys was, now you can be quick answer here, or as long as you want to drag it out. Was at least this year, going through mainly Jen going through it for the first time too, but if you guys can remember the first year, was it what you expected in terms of how your child would integrate into your life, or were you a little surprised, good or bad, in terms of it?
I'll start.
Yeah.
I was expecting it to be difficult, and I still was shocked at how difficult it was. Mainly the clinginess, and I'm not complaining about my son, but it's hard when he's screaming his head off because all he wants is me to hold him, and everyone else around me is trying their best to appease him, and sometimes he just wants mom, and you got to stop
Right
what you're
about it.
doing, and or step away or whatever. And it's tough. I remember the first 6 to 8 weeks, Dan and I were kind of just like couch potatoes with the baby. We just kind of vegged out. I mainly watched him play Fallout 4. And that was great. That's all we did, is just sit on the couch. And that's what I needed to do to kind of, I don't know, just get my head on straight. But it's getting easier. And if there is a baby number 2 in the future, I will be a lot more prepared mentally for, well, maybe not actually, because who knows what other challenges will be thrown my way on top of everything else. But I'm a little more prepared, I'll say, in advance.
Wow, I can't believe you just announced baby number 2.
Definitely not.
Yeah. So, Tom and John, anything from your first year, if you can remember that?
I had an easy baby. I'm gonna brag a little bit because my life is no longer easy. But our first child she slept all the time. She was very happy. So I was able to, do things I wanted to do because she would just sleep or be sitting in a chair and to be perfectly happy. Now with both of them mobile, it's quite a different story. I don't get to, I have to have my eyes constantly on them, or else they're in another room doing something they're not supposed to. But that's just the nature of the beast.
I played so much Destiny when I was on FMLA, because that's a thing that you can play in like 10-minute chunks, but also you can play it for a like 4-hour stretch, or you can play for just 10 minutes or whatever, and then be done for the day. And when you have like a newborn, it's your schedule is really volatile like that you don't know how long they're going to take to eat or nap, or when they're going to be changed and stuff like that. So you like I said, you can't do anything that expects you to sit down for like a long period of time, like watching a movie.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, thank you, guys.
I
Okay.
can't even remember what I was playing during that time.
It's all a blur.
Yeah.
I couldn't even. It was probably Destiny 2. I can't remember though. It seems like a lifetime ago. Maybe Gran Turismo, because I think that came out in 2022. I don't know. I can't remember.
Well, thank you, guys. Gives me, I guess, something to look forward to. So for this segment, we're gonna say goodbye to Jen. She's gonna head out. As you said,
Take care of the baby.
Yeah.
Don't be a stranger, Jen. Don't be a
I know.
stranger.
I'm gonna try to also integrate Game Vault back into my life. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. And perfect. We're about 20 minutes, so that kind of was what all I had booked, for you. And if you went longer, that was great. But yeah, so everybody that's watching this live, because we're live on our Twitch channel at Game Vault Pod, I'll say bye to Jen.
Bye.
She's heading
Bye,
up.
Jen.
I'm gonna mess up your camera now. Your camera.
It shouldn't. I'll hope so, but I'm gonna X you out of here, and you're gonna leave the stream right now. All right. And let's hope that it doesn't. It didn't mess up Tom when she came in, so.
That's because I didn't move. Jonathan did.
Yeah. All right. So that was our first segment. Hopefully, any of you out there that do currently have children maybe took some advice or could, understand what they were going through. I thought it was a pretty interesting topic that this first year, with everyone having a kid there. But we're moving on to what this podcast is usually about, our game of the year. Before we get into it, I'll just explain the rules going forward here. We're going to start off with 2 topics. The first one of them, I think it's going to be the second topic we do, but the one that I do every year, which is our favorite experience or moment in gaming this year. As I explained on probably Game Vault Pod and on Tom's Chrono Trigger stream, it can be anything in the gaming hobby, whether you put together your first computer or, you watched speaking of kids, you watch your kid beat their first game, or like, it doesn't necessarily have to be like, oh, that moment in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, that happened. It can be anything.
Don't spoil my answer.
that moment. But yeah, that's just putting out there. Because I use the example that mine one year was the first year we did this was that the podcast favorite niece, Kitty Ashcat, beating Mario Odyssey basically 85% on her own at like 7-8 years old. Was the first time I knew she'd be my inside kid of my nieces. And she is now currently probably playing a Rainbow Six Siege right now, if I'm understanding what she usually does on weekends. So I'm just glad she's out of Roblox. But yeah, so that was my choice there. But our first topic here was one that Jonathan suggested. I'll let him just give us the short rundown of what our first topic is before we get into the games of the year.
I gave you 2 suggestions. Which one do you want to do?
Okay, sorry about that. I thought it was the one that I had chosen was the what we think like the next dominant genre will be.
Oh yeah. Okay, so
yeah.
Paste's GOTY list is really good, and I really liked it this year. And their like tagline was the best games of 2024 are like tiny flowers growing out of the cement cracks of the apocalypse that is the game industry. And so like the short version of what they mean by this is there were a lot of really all-time great games that came out this year, but basically every AAA game flopped, or not necessarily flopped, but did not do particularly well. Like, I know we're going to be talking about Rebirth later. A lot of people like that game, but it did not sell nearly as much as they expected to, and I don't think it was as popular as the remake one. I don't know how to number that, but remake. And
just say the second one. Right.
But just as an example, so like Rebirth did not do as well as remake. And so my thought for a topic is Astrobot, however, is I feel like it's a AA game from what used to be Japan Studio, that celebrates AA Japan Studio games, and it was extremely popular. Everybody loves that game. And it's like one of the first big budget non-Nintendo 3D platformers to come out in the past few years, that has done really well. And last year we had Hi-Fi Rush, which was a character action game, which we don't actually get a lot of character action games. It's the same situation where it's a smaller studio that is part of a very large company, doing an unusual project that revitalizes or brings back a genre that has not been super common in recent years. My question is, what big budget game from a small part of a massive studio do you think is going to be revitalize another genre in the next few years? And I guess you two want to go first?
Yeah.
I've been thinking about this, and I think it's going to be, not to be biased, but I think it's going to be the Arcade Racer. I think it's going to be something nostalgic. I should start with. Because as we can see, Astrobot totally plays on that nostalgia of 3D platformers, collectathons, things like that from the N64 era. And I feel like that era also lends itself to a lot of arcade racers. Not necessarily, there was a lot of kart racers, but I feel like arcade racers, like Sega style arcade racers, were also very big at that time. And I think that we may see a resurgence, and it's not going to be a big budget. I think it's probably still going to be small budget stuff. But we've seen things like, what the hell is the name of it? It's I think it's called Absolute Drift. I forget. There's a few like there's a few overhead arcade racers, and there's also the usual like Sega Rally style arcade racers that have been coming out, and I feel like we're just waiting on that one that to be really good and knock it out of the park. I think Horizon Chase Turbo, for example, is that style of game that I think you're going to see. That's more of a Super Nintendo style game, but I feel like the next one's going to be like like a Dreamcast style Crazy Taxi or Daytona USA or something of that nature.
Yeah, and tagging on to that, the only two really big racing games right now are Forza and Gran Turismo, right? And both of those keep going more simulation-y, right? Yeah, and so then that leaves space for somebody to make a mid-budget arcade racer that gets huge just because there's essentially no competition for it.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think there's a whole genre out there that's not being touched and hasn't been touched in quite a long time.
Yeah. Jumping off, I completely agree. I didn't even think of arcade racers. That's actually really, really good. I was jumping off. I was thinking of this more. People jumping off the Astrobot thing that was mentioned. I feel like what they're going to try and do going forward in terms of maybe it'll be a new type of genre or something is just find a way. They're going to need to find a way to maybe have these games ways to have longer tails. It's essentially because if you're going to make something high budget, even a AA not great game, and arcade racers fit into this. Essentially is have a reason for people to constantly go back throughout the year. And I think a collectathon where you either do something, I'm just taking the Astrobot thing, and maybe you add a few more levels with some more, nostalgia or things to go pick up, or you add a speed run mode or a run where you can, play against your friends, just reasons to go back in the game or reasons to maybe buy skins or just keep pumping the money into the game because I think that's one of the major things as much as capitalism and stuff like that is the reason the industry is going down is because Rebirth's a great example. You put all that money into a game and then it doesn't sell anywhere near what you need to make any kind of either profit or break even. And then because now you're at the double-edged sword thing kind of where do you make a DLC, spend more money to make, say, a Vincent DLC or something to try and recoup like they did with Intermission, or do you just let it ride and just go into the next game on a lower budget? And I think going forward, I think studios are starting to, for the most part, figure out that they need to give people reasons to play a game for an entire year, rather than just, even single-player games at times. The one example I did just have in my head was the one big failing of that that could have been great for them was the Nintendo World Championships just not having any kind of integration with friends list or multiplayer at all, despite having a speedrunner board. And everybody probably forgot that game came out. and just because there was no, using your influencers and Twitch stuff to have a game, be pushed, have long term over a year. Yeah, I just think it's going to be they're going to figure out a different type of a genre, especially to replace what they were trying to do with live service, because that is obviously not working as well, with Concord and a bunch of the other ones that had to shut down relatively quickly, Suicide Squad and all. But yeah,
I was gonna say, I think a really interesting thing to comparison here is Concord versus Deadlock or Marvel Rivals, both of which are, all three of these are hero shooters.
Yeah.
And Deadlock and Marvel Rivals were both huge successes as soon as they were announced, and Concord was a complete flop when it was announced.
Yeah.
And the thing is just that all of these games have, all these AAA games just have such a long development time that you have to predict what people are going to want in 7 years and what's going to be available in 7 years. And for Concord, they missed. People were like, I do not want lore for, or I do not like this style of characters in a hero shooter. I'm not interested in lore for these characters. And that's a difficult thing to predict 7 years out. Whereas with Marvel Rivals, like, people do still like superheroes, even if Marvel movies are not as popular.
Yeah.
You still have a large most people are now much more aware of superheroes than they were. And Overwatch is not... Lots of people play Overwatch, but nobody likes Overwatch, right?
Yeah.
And so you've got lots of people who are happy to jump to a different hero shooter, but, like, nobody's going to jump from Overwatch to Concord. But they'll happily jump from Overwatch to Marvel Rivals.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just... But the fact that I mean, the term AAA comes from that they're supposed to be guaranteed investments, like 100% guaranteed. This game is going to make $1 bajillion or whatever. You're going to get your money back. And that's simply not true now.
No.
They are not in any way a guaranteed investment. And so that means that something's got to change.
Yeah.
In order for those.
And the one thing I was just thinking about as you were saying that, Jonathan, is I don't know if this would count in the spirit of the category that you were thinking. Fun thing for the people on stream, I just noticed that I'm running a video of myself playing a game and I'm over my own shoulder in the screen there. That was kind of weird. I think there's a chance that I think studios are going to branch one of two ways. They're either going to, like you said, try and, stick in the video game market and just sort of figure out how to make things 100% return on investment in the current field. Or I think they're going to do what Sony's doing and try to make single-player games that are very expensive, very good, that they can transition into multimedia in terms of, like, anime, movies, and TV, and see if that will get them the money, that they're looking for in their investment.
Spoiler alert, it won't.
Yeah. But I can see, like, that's what Sony's trying to do with this, because they're so heavily invested in single-player stories and stuff like that they're hoping that using Sony IP with Sony Pictures Studio and saving on all that licensing stuff that they would have to do, that they can go make prestige TV or a movie like they're going to try to do with Horizon, and just make money back that way. And as you both said, it's going to fail. But I see, I think the main thing that's going to happen, that in going forward, is I think a lot more studios are going to play it a little more safe with trying to figure out, they're not going to chase like a hot trend. I think they'll follow along things that have been tried and true, platformers, racers, and some references, sports games and stuff like that they know can, at least make money back and not completely flop. Yeah.
I think that would be the smart thing to do.
Yeah.
And I think looking at the most popular best games of the year, like not just the ones that we like best, but like
Yeah.
overall, what are the things that were critically or commercially successful? It's a billion genres all over the place, and like so many people are fed on like amazing games that came out for a niche that they really like. And so then you look at that, and as a normal, logical person, you would think, well, you should make a game for one of these niches, and then it's going to do well.
Yeah.
One of the outcomes of lockdown and people getting more into gaming from that is that you have more people
Yeah.
playing games than you used to, and so you have a bigger and more varied audience, and that means that what used to be like a really specific niche is now like a huge community. Like for example, how well did Harvest Moon sell on like the GameCube versus how well did Stardew Valley sell this year? Even
Yeah.
like that used to be weird games that there were only a couple in that genre, and now it's incredibly huge. It's insane. It's ridiculous how many of those games there are and how big they are. Like Coral Island is a game that sucks. I have not heard anybody say anything good about that game. It sold so many copies because the premise. Go ahead.
I
The
was just
premise
gonna
of
say,
Coral Island.
Didn't Disney make one too?
Yeah, Disney has one. But Coral Island, the premise is that it's a farming sim where you get to date mermaids. And so, like, yeah, obviously that sold millions of copies.
Yeah.
But it's not as much of, the mermaid stuff wasn't fully built out when they went to 1.0. And so that's why it has a lot of people that are not happy with it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
But so like a reasonable person would say you should make games for these niches, and then which is not a niche thing. It is actually like a huge community built around this genre that used to not be that well served and whatever. But I don't think that's what they're going to do.
No.
Because obviously not. Why would the massive corporations do the logical smart thing?
Yeah, exactly. And, there's I go back to a mixture of what the two of you have been saying. The arcade racer is a genre that hasn't been touched much, and it can currently be a niche, in that market that, you can put a game on there where you don't have to spend a whole lot of money, and you make it back quickly. Or in the sense that I was thinking, if somebody could find a new twist or a new fun take or whatever on something like a real-time strategy. I know Battle Aces is doing like quick matches and stuff like that to sort of grab that whatever people love, StarCraft and things like that. You could make a game relatively simply and very straightforward. And tap into something that hasn't really been served much, at least in mainstream things. Now, I could obviously not deep in the community. There could be games that have been, going off quickly in terms of that. But yeah, it's sort of it's trying to find the This is kind of a little bit of a weird way of stating this because it's mainly has another connotation altogether. But what they got to do and what the next new genre is going to be, or the next new thing, is they just gotta find that right vein to tap into to get the money flowing again in there. Sort of even if a studio doesn't spend hundreds of millions of dollars. Maybe they find, a game like Stardew Valley or even a game that we'll talk about a bunch going forward here. That was basically just a card game. You just find different twists on things. You find the right, stream of people that have been looking for something, and you can be successful. But all these high-end CEO people, and I feel like even Phil Spencer and stuff like that, just keep wanting to pump at the same thing, and like 1 out of 10 times they'll be correct. Like I'm thinking of Indy, you know.
I mean,
Yeah, like an Indiana Jones, but they'll fail most of the time and spend way more money than they need to.
a thing to keep in mind here is that this discussion is not about like, are these companies making enough money to continue employing people and continuing to make things?
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely. Even these games that like significantly underperform are still making enough to like keep the company afloat. However, that's not their goal. Their goal is to make infinite dollars every year. And you can't, if you make these like reasonable, logical bets, smaller bets in a bunch of different areas across the board, you will absolutely be able to make enough money to stay afloat and like continue growing as a company or whatever, but you will not make literally infinite dollars. And so that's why they won't do it, because in theory, if you become the next Fortnite or whatever, which again, remember that Fortnite was a flop when it first came out.
Also a totally different game than it is now.
Yes. Then you could make infinite money. And also all of the like executives by definition are not video game developers. I would be surprised if any of them had any sort of background in game design of any kind. And so it is not people who make games or even necessarily play many games who are making the decisions about what games get made.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, essentially that is it's an interesting thought, you know, or thought process going forward in terms of what things will look like in the future. And if you out there have any thoughts, feel free to hit us up in the comments on the YouTube video here or on wherever you follow us on social media. We're on Blue Sky, Threads, anywhere. Just let us know what your answer to this topic is. And that'll go for everything we do today. But this one seems to be one that could have some deep discussion. We do have a Discord as well. I'm just really bad at checking it. So if you do, I might need to start doing that in the future. But yeah, let's move on to our second topic, a little more personal of a topic. What was your favorite moment of your gaming year? I'll start off here, just because mine is probably I can point to one of the games, but it sort of is a compilation of everything, is when it just happened very, very recently and would have been completely different if we did this podcast like a week or two ago. But when I finished Sonic 3 last night, was just the culmination of I've played all of those games and never actually beat them, even with emulation and being able to cheat a little bit on it. I've never gotten through all of it, and it was such an accomplishment there when I got that, when I finally beat that and sort of checked that box on my list. And that goes for, as we're going through all of these games I've been playing for the Endurance Run, those are just the type of games, because I'm not great at platformers and probably it's probably not a fun watch to have me stream, but to go through and sort of play a genre that I'm not great at and be able to complete it, and especially in front of people, kind of was a great moment for me this year. But if I had to do to a specific one, it was finally conquering Sonic, in terms of a game individually. So I was very, very, very happy with that. And the next game, which we'll announce on the news hour, is another one that's sort of on that list of games that I've been trying to beat for years. And also this year it included, when I was doing the speed runs of Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, of finally figuring out the easy way to beat my nemesis, Soda Popinski, in that game. So in general, I guess my moment is like getting through and over these games that I've had struggles with. and it's been a great year for that for me. So, yeah, what do you?
Both
What,
of those are NES games. How long have you struggled with them?
well,
Well,
yeah,
it's not a NES game, but it's the same generation. But
yeah. So basically, I guess for Sonic it would be 9 years old, and I guess 8 or 9 for Mike Tyson's Punch Out as well. So yeah, so we're looking 30 plus years. For Soda Popinski, I didn't beat him for 25 years. My first victory was on the plane ride back, legitimately not speedrun victory, back from Las Vegas from our friend's wedding at 3:30 in the morning on the red eye back from Vegas. To where I wanted to just yell in the middle of that plane when Gano got the TKO. But yeah, it's sort of like doing that. That's been my favorite, moment thing of the year is just getting through those games and actually beating them. When we first started out with this idea, me and Tom, I was like, Tom, it's like I'm not going to beat these things, and it's just going to be, boring. And then, there were some fun moments. I rewatched the thing where I made a really ridiculous jump in Super Mario in Yoshi's Island, and then immediately died on the next jump. Um, that's it. That's on our YouTube channel. It's the ups and downs of Yoshi's Island. But yeah, that was just this year doing that streaming stuff was my moment of the year. Yeah. So what do you guys got? Who wants to jump in?
First, congrats on beating a 9-year-old.
Yep.
You can go ahead, Tom.
I have two. I'm gonna cheat. I have two. First one was redoing my gaming setup down here, which, if anybody has ever rewired, like a bomb or something, you would know what I went through. I sent pictures to everybody in our like group chat. Like, I wanted to do this. This was my idea, with all of the wires and cables and everything just laying around. But it's always so. It's such a great feeling once it's all together and you know how it works, and you just can press a button and get your game up on your whichever screen you want to play it on. But it was a lot of work, and I'm pretty happy with it. And I'm glad I redid it because I loved the way it looked previously. If you've seen the YouTube video of my setup from, I guess it was 2021, I liked the square shelves, but every time I go on Reddit, everybody's got the same thing, and everything looks exactly the same. Since doing that, so I wanted to mix it up, change it up a little bit, and not have it be white cookie cutter or the same thing that everybody has on the internet. So I may do an update video at some point. Who knows? If I have, the time, I might do that. But that was the first one, and the second one was, Mark, as you said, in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Not the moment you were talking about.
Yeah.
The moment I'm thinking of is when you walk out of the cave from Calm, and you just see the entire open world of that game.
Yeah.
And my little 10-year-old, or however old I was when I played the original game, my 12-year-old mind was blown by the visuals, the visuals and the openness of everything, because it's incredible. It's an incredible thing to take a 30-year-old game and that was basically a giant flat sheet and turn it into this three-dimensional world, this living three-dimensional world, and it brought a tear to my eye.
Yeah. I knew something to that nature would be your moment of the year, because it wasn't as long as you had to wait for something like that, but the one that almost won and probably would have won before last week was just a random thing in the early access of Hades 2. So there will be some spoilers here. I'm not going to tell you exactly what happens. So if you guys are wanting to play that or waiting to play it and all, the first moment when you realize that part of the game is going up towards Mount Olympus was like a moment of, oh, there's a whole nother half a game. Like, oh, okay. There's no wonder why this is still early access despite all of the game I played. But it's the same sort of moment of going, like, walking into something and just being like, oh my God, this is not what I was expecting and much better than I was expecting. Yeah, but I completely get that. So Jonathan, what do you have?
Yeah. So I will talk a little bit more about this when we get into games of the year. But in 2022, I played Lies of P at launch because it's a Souls-like. People are very excited about it. It's the Pinocchio Souls-like.
Yeah.
And I liked it, but I liked watching it better than playing it because my build didn't work out and I only made it to like chapter 5, and at that point I was like, man, I know that I'm having more trouble with this than other people, and so I really should just start over instead of trying to make it through another chapter before I can respec to try a different weapon. And then so I just dropped it, and like I said, I've watched people play it a little bit since then. But this year, people got interested in it again because they announced DLC.
Yeah,
so I played it again, and I just blew through the whole thing. I think I like getting through chapters without getting killed, stuff like that. And I even beat the final boss, or the secret boss, after the final boss. And that was the only thing that was like a wall to me. And I don't remember how long it actually took me. I think it was like an hour, maybe. But beating that, I felt so good, just because of how much better at the game I was since 2 years ago.
Sometimes you just need that 2-year break.
Yeah. It's just I don't think I've ever had. I mean, I've learned I had the opposite reaction going back to Elden Ring. Where I'm like, oh, I'm in a place where I need to relearn this game before moving forward. But yeah, that's always like a really cool thing. It's just, I'm probably gonna. I want to try because I've been, especially Eternights has been doing this for me. Going back and actually finishing Tears of the Kingdom, because on the final boss, the second phase requires you to just parry or dodge everything. Like, you can't just go in and just mash the button and beat them. And it became a wall for me, so maybe inspiration from you, Jonathan, of pushing past your wall. I'll go and try that in 2025 here.
Wait, Mark, you made it through the whole game without doing the one thing you have to do the whole game?
Yeah, I think we talked about this last year on the Game of the Year, where I could get flurry rushes every so often, but the way it at that point in the game, when it's the second thing in the final boss, Nintendo and the developers were like, oh yeah, they probably have done this thousands of times throughout the game here in battles. Yeah. And I was
think
not.
The same thing happened in Breath of the Wild too. I think you had to parry stuff in that.
Yeah, I had to parry the thing with the shield, and that's why that also was a stop and go back a few months later to finish. But I was thinking about this recently because I was watching very recently. I was watching the Breath of the Wild speed run on Games Done Quick, the Tears of the Kingdom run on Games Done Quick, and or whatever one it was. It was one or the other. And, I was like, oh, I was looking at this. Maybe I should go back and try that now, I've gotten a little bit more time, playing a game that expects you to dodge. Even Nier had that for me, and maybe I can get into that. But yeah, pushing through the wall is always something that is great when you go back and finish it. I guess technically I did that, getting through all these games that children should beat when they first came out.
I mean, how much did they expect kids to actually beat it versus just that they keep playing it?
That's true.
Only getting to a certain part, or that you can't beat it by the time you have to return the game and stuff.
That's true. I think the only one on the list that I beat that was definitely like, yeah, a baby, they expected children to beat it is Yoshi's Island. Because that game is babied down a little bit compared to Super Mario World, which was the only one of those games that I have beaten, which is weird. And it's for the same fact that you said. It was the one game I had outside of Link to the Past. So once I got tired of beating Link to the Past as much as I did as a kid, I needed to find something else. But yeah. So as I mentioned at the end of the last segment, if you guys have a moment of the year or a moment from a game, spoilers are okay here, because we're going to be starting to spoil stuff here. I'm going to try my best to be as vague as possible with one of my games with Tom, because I think he's still playing it. The little spoiler for Tom at one of the games that is in my... I'm doing 4 instead of 3 just because I want to talk about one game that I know me and Tom don't share on the list here. But yeah, just feel free anywhere, come and try and join the Discord, but definitely comment on the video or hit us up on social media. What was your moment of the year? Was it watching a friend or, a kid, family member or something, beat their first game? Was it you beating a game for the first time? Whatever out there, just let us know. It can be anything. It's just whatever your moment from 2024 was. All right, let's get into our game of the year. The two boys here. This way. Yep. I always get wrong with the. Yeah, there we go. The boys here. Have 3 games they've chosen from the list. I think me and Jonathan both have around 10 total if we were going to do a full thing here. But Tom, as he has mentioned a couple of times, is only outside of Chrono Trigger, hasn't had time to play enough to fill a full list. So they're going to do 3. I'm doing 4 because me and Tom share 2. So just to...
At least 2.
Yeah, at least 2. So to share to talk about, more than just a couple of games there. So
do we want to do a round robin, or do we want to do each person does all 3 at once?
We can do one of 2 things. We can either do the way that remap, and I'll do it where we say our game, and if someone else has it higher, we wait to talk at that point about it, which I think might be the best way to go about it. I don't know what you guys think about it.
That works for me. That works.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Because then
we'll let our guest Jonathan go first.
Yeah. Well, I'll go first with my number 4,
Okay,
because we're gonna talk about it later. But number 4 on my list is Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. So that is going to come up later. And so we'll talk about it then. So let's get into the top 3. Jonathan, you can start us off.
All right. My number 3 is Dungeon Antiqua.
Nice.
Did either of you play that?
No.
Nope.
No?
I never
Okay.
heard of it.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
It's a turn-based RPG that is a combination of Wizardry 1 and Final Fantasy 1. And so it's like all of the mechanics. Sorry. Man, I already messed up my list. I was going to do mine as superlatives, and I do have them in an ordered list of like 3, 2, 1, whatever. But the superlative for this one is Best Wizardry 1 Remake. Because that is because I played the Wizardry 1 remake by Night Dive Studios, and it sucks. It's not a good way to play that game. But this one, so it's a combination of Wizardry 1 and Final Fantasy 1. Basically, it's the mechanics of Wizardry, like the classes and how, like, the weapons that you buy from the shop and stuff like that, and resurrecting characters, all of that from Wizardry. But it looks like Final Fantasy 1. So instead of being a first-person dungeon crawler, it is like a traditional NES JRPG sprites and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the sprites for each of the classes look like they're in the style of the Final Fantasy sprites.
Okay.
Even though the classes are very different because, well, yeah, they're fairly different because it's the Wizardry classes. And it's just really fun to play through. It's kind of mindless and grindy because it's based on Final Fantasy 1 and Wizardry 1, which are both very old RPGs, like foundational RPGs. And so the thing that was novel about them is that you can play a turn-based or a tabletop role-playing game on your computer or
NES.
NES,
Yeah.
But still. It's I just had a great time with it, and I think both of you would probably like it, or at least appreciate it, because both of you like NES RPGs.
Yeah. I actually, once you started describing it, I heard it brought up on one of the games of the year as like an honorable mention. Somebody had mentioned it because I remembered someone making sort of the same Wizardry joke that you made, going, talking about that it was better than the remake of Wizardry. But yeah, these type of games, I really it's always like I use the term a lot, but like the double-edged sword thing where I really want to go back and play these games. Like I bought the Pixel remasters and have not touched it for the Switch, just because I think I would like them and enjoy them, but I think I would either not get everything out of it because I would be too quick to do a look up on a walkthrough or something, just because it would frustrate me a little bit. But
you should absolutely use a walkthrough
for
Final Fantasy 1. It does not progress in a logical order in any way.
Okay. All right.
I think 1 through 3 you should probably use a walkthrough.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way to know where you're going. Like there's a lot of stuff that I wouldn't feel bad about using a guide.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So maybe I will look it up. Sorry. There we go. Now we should be back. A tab made a sound in the background. I had to go close, and apparently Tom went away when I went to do that. Yeah. So I'll definitely pick it up. I think it may or may not be another game. I know there's a game that might be on your list. I don't know if you'll mention it today. But I had them both on my. Now I'll add this to it, but I had that one on my list for sure to check out in January, before new games start coming out. So Tom,
Yes.
What is your number 3?
Indiana Jones.
All right, let's talk about Indy.
So
go right ahead.
you go first since it's your number 4, so you gotta go first.
Yeah. You haven't beaten it yet, right?
No, I haven't.
Okay, let's have you go first so I can see kind of where you're at.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Backing up first, the remap thing that Mark was talking about is they wait until you get to the person who has that game highest on their list, so that that person can lead the discussion because they're hottest on it, and so they get to drive why is this game so meaningful to them.
Yeah.
And then the other people who played it or have it on their list can say chime in with them as well. But this is to avoid having somebody who has it last place on their list saying, yeah, I thought it was all right. And then the other person's like, well, I mean, I also really like the characters or whatever.
Yeah.
And it kind of steals their thunder.
Yeah. That's a better way of getting what I was going through my head, Jonathan.
So then Tom should start with this because he's got it higher.
Yeah.
So I'm not super far into it because it's been a rough last couple of weeks, so I haven't had as much time to play as I'd like to, but just getting through the first couple of stages, the sense of adventure is amazing. The opening sequence is one of the best opening sequences to a Bethesda game I think I've ever played. Just getting to replay, a moment that everybody knows so well, and they put you in that situation, and you're in a first-person situation as opposed to like a Tomb Raider where you're playing third person and it's not as engaging. I thought that it was brilliant to put you in that situation immediately. The game is beautiful. I mean, what can you say? There's so many different places you experience that that they seemingly nail when it comes to visuals. It's hard to not enjoy that part of the game.
Yeah. And also, to jump on that real fast before you continue, they did a really good job, from what I can tell, making it look like it did in 1937.
Right. That's the other thing, is
Yeah.
making it look like pre-war era. Also, you get to punch Nazis in the face. I
Yeah.
mean, it doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah.
And pretty much do whatever you want to them. I know, Mark, you'd said you've been trying to do the pacifist run.
I did do the pacifist run.
I did not. I shot somebody else immediately.
Somebody did like the scene from Raiders. I think it's Raiders, where the guy does all the fancy knife stuff and then he shoots him.
Yeah.
Somebody did that on the first boss when you're entering the Vatican. That guy that walks up to you on that bridge, right before you see Antonio. I was watching one of the streamers I was watching play it, and the guy just runs up to him and he just pulls out the pistol and shoots him in the head, and he falls down. And it was like very much that's the main thing about that game. My jump in here, Tom, you're going to enjoy the second half of this game. There's a moment coming up. You're in Giza now, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is probably the best in terms of adventure and exploration in the game. In terms of being true to indie stuff, and then everything after that is pretty funny. My three major takeaways from it, and why it ended up on number. Yeah, go ahead.
Real quick, I like that it's a Bethesda adventure style game that has like rails, not necessarily on rails, but sometimes with Bethesda style games, I just get too into the weeds with picking every single thing up or opening every single door. This doesn't have that. It has a bit of direction as opposed to, Fallout or Elder Scrolls or anything like that. So I'm happy for that. Yeah. Some people don't like that. I do. I need that.
Yeah, and that was going to be part of what I'll get into my thoughts on the same thing. And it also doesn't have as much. It doesn't have as many, because of that, as many glitches. It's probably because it's Machine Games and not Bethesda Game Studios that actually developed it. Why you still get that Bethesda feel to it, but don't have all the problems that Fallouts and Skyrims and Oblivions and Elder Scrolls stuff has.
Did Machine Games do the Wolfenstein series?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So, my three main things with this is the true to life historical care that they put into this game to not have things feel like out of place. Still remembering that you're in the 30s, even with the way they talk about, like, people talk about the Nazis and the fascists. Like, it's not all gone bad in, like, even neutral parts of the world with it, but Indy is very against both of them in there. He has a great line where he's just like, he's talking to the Nazi bad guy, and the Nazi Voss basically says, "We're the same, guys like us," and he goes like, "Not you, you're a Nazi," something like with a real sneer to it. that brings me to one of the most remarkable things about this game is how much I forgot that Troy Baker is doing the voice, and it's not just some kind of sampling of Harrison Ford's voice. In this,
he really knocks it out of the park.
Yeah, there are times when you feel a little bit, but I don't know how you're still early, but like, do you see that? Like, he knocks it out of the park, but you still feel a little bit Troy in him.
Yeah, a little bit, but like if you're not listening for it,
Yeah,
you would never know. You'd have no idea that it wasn't Harrison Ford doing it.
yeah. I think one of the things I didn't have time to research it. In the fact that I wonder if they did mocap since it's first person. I don't know if they did for the most part, but there are times when you could sort of see like Troy Baker facial animations come through when he's delivering some of the lines, like a lot of like similar things he does with Joel and the guy from BioShock, Booker. Sort of things that are Troy Baker isms, like you can't help it. But besides that, it's like 98% accurate. And they get the writing down to where my next big point with it is this might be the best Indiana Jones story movie since Last Crusade. Like the story...
100% agree with that.
Yeah, the story and the way the characters interact and the care they take to the stuff that may or may not be true, but they're using historical things to sort of play around with it, is so much better than the last two movies have done. And I don't know if that's a key fact of writing or direction or the fact that maybe Harrison Ford didn't give a fuck in the two movies that he's done, and that Troy Baker did, and that's why this indie feels better. The girl is a great Indiana Jones girl. I was going to say indie girl again, and I didn't want to confuse Jonathan. That was a great comment when I said that, Jonathan. But yeah, this game is if you love Indiana Jones movies, like especially the 3 in the 80s, you can just go to story mode or whatever it's called, the top one, and just play through easy puzzles, and just get the whole experience and have a hell of a time. And you get to punch Nazis in the face, hit them with things. Or if you want to really have fun, you can do it from the squat motion and just punch them in the dick until they die. There's so many things like whip stuff where you can pull them down elevator shafts and throw them down pits or push them into like water and stuff like that. That is just the combat, while a little janky, like you get in people's faces and stuff like that. Like with first person game, you sort of start blending assets together. Gets a little weird, but besides that, like, I did all melee. I did not shoot my gun once. There are 2 scenes in the game where they want you to shoot your gun, and I just sat there. Literally, when I did it, I'm like, the save is not that far back. I'm just going to sit here and see if this scene finishes without me shooting a gun. And it did. And so I was able to do that. So, Pacifist Run. Unfortunately, there's no achievement or trophy for it.
That's unfortunate.
There's an achievement in your heart.
There's an achievement in my heart, for sure. Because, for those of you who don't know my history, I think I brought this up at some point over the 9-10 years we've been on Twitch. That I did a full no-kill run of the second Deus Ex game. Mankind Divided, I think is the second one. I think it's yeah, the second one. Full, killed all the bosses with the tranq guns. Knockout stuff, no kills. So when I offered that option, I try and take it. Being able to do that in this game, but the reason that they can't give you an achievement or trophy is because there's one scene where you have to shoot a gun. Like, but it's not. I'm trying to talk around it so Tom doesn't get spoiled, but there's a moment where you have to fire a gun as part of the scene, or else you can't get through the scene. And you'll know exactly what I mean, Tom, when you get to it.
Yeah.
But outside of that, the twists and turns in the story, the historical stuff, me being a history nerd, what was top notch, and that's why it made it into my top 4 is really close, and the order changed a whole bunch. I finally locked it in today for this podcast, but yeah,
Can I also tell you why it's not higher on my list?
go right ahead.
The second they take you and put you into the story mode, like after the whole intro sequence, is a stealth mission.
Okay.
And
I was
stealth
gonna
mission-
ask about this.
Yeah.
Stealth missions are my least favorite thing of all time. So I kind of got a bad taste in my mouth right off the bat, but after that I was okay. But I was like, really? The first time mission we're doing is a stealth mission?
Yeah.
It might as well have been a water level.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a Metal Gear guy, so that didn't bother me at all.
The main thing I've heard about this game is people calling it Dishonored Light.
Yeah.
Which is a first-person stealth game. And so
Yeah.
when Tom said this was on his list, I was like, Tom, the guy who hated Deathloop because it was a stealth game. I see.
This game is much easier than Deathloop.
Yeah. It didn't even clock to me that anybody would be frustrated with that opening stealth scene. As someone, like I said, that is probably most looking forward to Delta this year.
I mean, it's not like it was,
yeah.
terrible. I was not prepared for a stealth mission in a game where a guy cracks a whip all the time and shoots his gun and whatever.
That was one of my fun things that I figured out, is that if you accidentally crack the whip, you alert everybody. Like, they took that into effect and didn't give you a pass on it.
Well, it's not like the fake silencer in video games where nobody ever hears a gunshot.
Yeah. So Indiana Jones, if you have Game Pass, highly recommend at least trying it out. If you don't want to, really deal with puzzles and stuff, because puzzles are great. I love every puzzle that I've come across in that game, and I played it on the normal level, and not the easy level. There's only one puzzle that I got frustrated with, but it was because I didn't understand how the thing works. You haven't gotten to it yet, Tom. I didn't understand how the thing worked, so it took me a while to sort of figure it out, and I just took a guess, and ended up being right. But yeah, everything else has been great. All right, so that comes to, I guess, my number 3 on this list, and Tom, I think we're going to be talking about this one a little bit later. My number 3 is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about it quite a bit.
This is why I went to 4, because I believe my 2 and 1 are games that are exclusively probably going to be me. So yeah, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth comes in at number 3. Like I said, 1 through 4 was very, very tight for me. Indy probably the furthest separated from them, but yeah, top 4 was real tough this year. So we'll go, I guess, into number 2s. Jonathan, what's the second game you have?
My award for densest narrative goes to 1000X Resist.
Yep.
This is basically a walking sim about the Asian diaspora or Chinese diaspora and the 2019 Hong Kong protests.
Yeah, that's
And
what I've heard.
And so I had heard those things, and I was like, oh, okay, sure, but it's a sci-fi game, so I guess it's just like a metaphor. ReFantasio.
Yeah.
But then I'm playing it and I'm like, oh no, this is like about the 2019 Hong Kong protests and the Chinese diaspora, and it's like it's set in the far future, but the events of the games start with It's the 2019 Hong Kong protests. They don't call it that, but that's what it is. It's very clear that that's what's happening. They're in Hong Kong. They are protesting in the modern day. And then that's like one layer of the story. And then there's another layer around it that's a metaphor about those two things. And there's another layer around that that's a metaphor about those things. And there's another layer around that of like what spirals out of all of these things and how they are all interconnected and all of the ways that people react to all this stuff. And it's just really good. It's extremely well written. Even if you don't know anything about those two things, they do a very good job of like explaining things. You understand the stakes of what is happening and why people are doing things and why they're reacting to things the way that they are, and all of that.
Yeah.
So absolutely recommend that game to basically everybody who likes story.
Yeah. So this is one of the games I'm definitely picking up and trying to play in January here. You told me immediately that I would love it, and then I heard people talking about it on their games of the year. Got a little bit spoiled with some of the story, but I still think I will very, very much enjoy it from what I've heard from you and what I heard from them. So yeah, 1,000 times Resist. Highly recommended from even people outside of this stream. It's been on a bunch of Game of the Year stuff that I've seen so far. All right, so Tom, I think your number 2 is the one game I have not played, if my calculations are right.
Yep, and I've been telling you to play this game for months, and you didn't listen.
I did not.
Shame on Mark.
Shame on me.
Shame on Mark. My number 2 game of the year, which I can't believe, unless Jonathan has it higher, well, I don't know that he does. I can't believe I'm the only person who has this on their list, is Astrobot.
Oh yeah, I didn't play it.
I can't recommend this game enough. So, the feeling I got when I started playing Astrobot was a sense of nostalgia for a game that I've never played before. You get thrown into this world and you are thrown into something that feels very familiar but is all brand new to you. You're a little bot trying to reconstruct his ship, and you're going around the universe, and you keep unlocking planets and galaxies and things like that as you go to try to find the pieces to your ship so you can get home to your planet, all while collecting bots that were also on the ship that got ejected out into the world. So you're looking for bots, you're looking for puzzle pieces, which I still haven't figured out what I think the puzzle pieces are just something to do. I don't know that they really have I don't know that they're a necessity.
Yeah, it end up being the secret ending.
I mean, it could, but I don't.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten 100% through the game. I'm like 90% of the way through. But it's just so refreshing because and especially Jonathan, for you, like, it's a game you could pick up and play for 10 minutes and be done with it, or you could pick it up and play for 2 hours, and you could get a lot out of it in those 2 hours.
Yeah,
it's not very long, but if you want 100% it might take a little while to find everything in every level. The levels aren't super long. It's kind of Super Mario 64-esque, but there's a lot of gimmicks and stuff in each level where you may get a different power up for a certain level, or you may get a power up where you shrink every time to try to get into small spaces and get certain things. But it's a very cute game, which is what surprised me that so many people liked it. I always thought that these kind of games, people were like, oh, it's a baby game, I don't want to play that. But I really enjoy it. I mean, the music's great. Something you do need to know if you have children or animals who don't like weird noises, your controller will make a lot of noises.
I
Most
hate
of
that
the
so much.
most of the
Controller
sound
speaker.
comes out of the controller. You can turn it off, obviously, but
Yeah.
it's just something you have. Like, it kind of catches you off guard at first because like a lot of the sound is coming out of your controller. But you know, it's a first party PS5 game, so they had to put every bit of
Yeah.
tech they could in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm sad that neither of you guys have played it. You both really should play it.
Yeah.
Highly recommend it.
I am definitely probably going to play it at some point, for sure. I think I made the choice of buying, and it was more of a personal choice, and I might have regretted it. Of when things went on sale, I took the sale for Infinite Wealth over buying Astrobot New.
I mean,
At the time.
I understand that you have played
Yeah.
every Yakuza game.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that
So
doesn't surprise me.
yeah, but like I said, going through a little spoiler for what I'm going to talk about with Infinite Wealth, which is not one of my next two games. But yeah, I probably would have been better off playing Astrobot. But then I would have had 5 games, apparently, according to that I have to figure out where to rank them. So it's to my number 2, and it's pretty funny that if you're watching this stream, and might be a surprise to Tom, my number 2 is the game currently playing on the screen. It is Metaphor ReFantazio. This was the hardest pick.
I figured this was your number 1, Mark.
Yeah, I know. This was the hardest pick between this and what is my number 1, which may or may not surprise you guys when I get to it. But Metaphor, as I was thinking back on it, the game is amazing. I love all of the characters. It was what separated it from some other games that I played in this genre. I think it did a slightly better way of getting me invested in all the characters, even the ones that are like enemies turned friends sort of thing in the game, because of the way they do tell the story in a little bit more of an adult manner in terms of class struggle and, you know, prejudice and I guess technically racism, you know, because they're or speciesism or whatever. I could never really figure out what they were going for with that. In terms of the separations between them, it took me till halfway through the game to realize what was what outside of the dog ear, cat ear people, and
Oh, sure.
and the those were the only ones I could tell the difference or knew what their name was. In there, there's 2 that are like the vaguely normal human looking ones, that are actually different things. But I think, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I'm sure it's not a super original idea, but the anime Ruby kind of goes into this the same type of classism or whatever you want to call it, or
Yeah.
And
speciesism.
also,
I don't know.
and also does not do a super great job.
No,
Yeah.
I didn't say it did. I'm just
No,
saying
no, no.
it's-
I mean, sorry, that was leading into what I was going to say, which is I've heard lots of really, really good things about Metaphor, and I've watched a bunch of. It's not a game I really want to play myself, but I've really enjoyed watching streams of it.
Yeah.
And there's like the combat is fantastic, great evolution of all of the Persona stuff and whatever, and also like you were saying, really good job with the characters becoming NPCs, ripping their heart out and whatever.
Yeah.
The only thing is, a downside is like, or like negative is, the politics are not super coherent or
Yeah, I was going to
very
get to that. Yeah.
serious, but they do take their world building very seriously, and so to your point, it is the like whole world and story and stuff is still very considered. It's just not like, and that all goes together very well. It's like very well done. It's just that don't consider this like intelligent statements on real world
Yeah.
politics.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's a difference when I said grown up way of it, like different from like the storylines in Persona.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It definitely
Not high school.
Yeah, not high school. Speaking of it, switching to Persona while we're in the middle of talking to it, the video here. But yeah. My main thing, just you started me on that path there. The sort of confusing wrong way, because you could kind of understand it. Like the end, like I kind of could see what they were going for, but then it went places. I'm like, okay, I guess. All right. Sort of I had those reactions to things. Like it didn't, I think I used this in another description for another game. It doesn't stick the landing, at the ending, with the way they build up and do all that. And it's just kind of weird. But I could see what they were going for, but I don't think it impacted as much as they thought it would. But that doesn't take away from, I was able to get, all max level on all the characters in terms of our bonds. So I got to see all those stories. Heismay would have been my character of the year, in terms of, games that I've played. That character is, the best analog, for like Tom, and I don't know if Jonathan would agree with this, that I heard, is that he's kind of like, he's got like the Master Splinter vibe, to him in terms of being
this guy,
yeah, Heismay. Yeah, it's sort of like he's a ninja bat person. So, his whole introduction to the game is they do a good way of sort of letting you know that, not everything is what it seems with him, from how you meet him. And, leading up to his thing has probably my favorite, mission objective ever in a game, which just in the upper right-hand corner with an exclamation point at the end, it just said, "Get to the anus." And I'm just like, yeah, that, they didn't go deep in, that's the goofy seriousness,
They didn't do what, Mark?
I know, I gotta watch. I gotta watch when I say sentences and then pause in the middle and then finish it. Because I think the line of the year from the NewsHour podcast was when I was talking about not playing a game, and I said I didn't touch myself or touch it or something like that. And I paused the sentence before finishing it, and all I got was a message at like whatever time Anthony was listening to it, of just that section he had cut out and sent over text to me. So yeah, I know I do that. But yeah, with going back to Metaphor, I think the only thing I was really missing in this is, at times it felt like they were trying to do too much to push away from the Persona stuff in terms of the relationships, because they didn't want to do any kind of relationship stuff like getting waifus or anything, which absolutely fits in the game. But at times it felt like they were going too far in the direction of, making sure that there was no thoughts of that, even though everybody has headcanons. And you have Hulkenberg step on me, mommy, things going around on the internet. But yeah, this game overall, this is just like, I was listening to our Game of the Year stuff last year, Tom, and lead up to this, and this game had the same effect that Final Fantasy 16 had for me, that I don't know if I would have played it this year if they did not put the demo out.
I think it's great that they keep putting these high quality demos, whether they be just the first stage or whatever.
Yeah.
They really do themselves a service by having a good demo.
Yeah, like this was on my radar because it was the Persona people. But, I was like, there's a lot of other things coming out. I still hadn't played Infinite Wealth yet, and I wanted to play that. And then it was like, oh, free demo. And I was like, oh, let me try it out. And then I streamed it, which is on our YouTube channel, and instantly fell in love with it, just like I did with 16 last year. Rebirth had the same thing with a demo, but we both knew we were going to play that game.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the demo didn't have as much of an impact. So, if anything, 2 games that made my top 10 that weren't even on my radar to play in that year both had the advantage of having a demo. You know, to get me enticed to spend money on it. So, yeah, that is my number 2. Metaphor ReFantazio. All right, let's get into our number 1s here. Really the only one that, well, you guys probably don't know mine, but I'm curious at what Jonathan's top game was, or whatever, however he wants to label it. Here.
Really? You can't guess?
Oh, are we gonna have is DLC Game of the Year talk?
Yeah, it's Elden Ring. The award for best sports broadcast goes to Elden Ring.
Nice.
So, Tom, Mark, can you show that video that I linked in the chat here?
Okay.
So, the reason I say best sports broadcast is because Elden Ring is my game of the year for 3 different reasons. And the first reason is I watched so much of Bingo Brawlers, which is a
Let's get started.
esports competition, basically, of Elden Ring. The DLC came out this year, and so the Season 4, which ended maybe a month or 2 ago or something like that, is like in the DLC, and it's like you have randomized objectives, basically, that you have to do. You're competing against somebody else. You got to fill out a bingo board. 2 people can't get the same square. I think I watched something like, it's double-digit number of hours. I think it's like 30 hours maybe in total, because I watched the whole season. And this thing is great because it has all of the really good sports jargon. Like, they, in the commentary of the match, they'll be like, oh yeah, so Bree is going for Tears right now. However, she's got to watch out that Adef has Prio on Church District right now, and so like she's got to keep that in mind. And all of the like bizarre things that don't make sense unless you really understand what all these terms mean, that you get from like watching ESPN or whatever. But about this video game. The second reason it's my
Do you think you have what it takes to make like it never even happen? Then you belong at the #1 brand in property restoration.
Too difficult. There were basically that it's too difficult. I can go on a long rant about why this is different from Souls games bosses being difficult like normally, but it's just really difficult to see what's happening in the fight because there's a lot of like flashy effects, and so it's hard to tell why you got hit or whatever. But there are 5 other boss fights in the game that would be all-time great final boss fights. So the actual final boss not being underwhelming kind of gets overshadowed by those. The 5 that I'm thinking of specifically are Dread, which YouTube might have seen memes or clips of Curse You Bale, the fantastic monologue. There's an NPC in this. Bale is a gigantic, partially like scarred ancient dragon, and there's an NPC who can join the fight with you, who yells, "Curse you, Bale!" And it's like a Shakespearean actor. Yeah, the video that I asked you to show is of the Bingo Brawler stuff, and I sent it at the timestamp for you to see the Mesmer fight, just like how ridiculously intense this fight is. That you can, I think, stop showing it if it's having problems or whatever.
No, it's fine. I'm just trying to figure out how to get it on screen. Yeah. There we go.
NPC yells, "Curse you, Bale," does this whole monologue. It's like absolutely 100% ripped from like Moby Dick. It's Moby Dick except about a gigantic dragon, and it's such a cool, spectacular fight. Then Leda and her companions, which I don't want to spoil what that one is. Midra is the Lord of the Frenzied Flame. In the base game, one of the endings is where you become the Lord of the Frenzied Flame. Then you go to the DLC. There's this guy who's called the Lord of the Frenzied Flame, and you're like, oh no, oh hell no, that's me. That's my title. And it's a battle between both of you for who is going to destroy the world.
Yeah.
There is Metter, the Mother of Fingers, which is like the fingers are the gods of Elden Ring, and so that's like fitting as being like the final battle for all of the game and the DLC.
Yeah.
And then the last one is Mesmer, the fight I sent you the video to show.
Yeah.
You saw how intense that fight is, and that is the another one of the demigods. And
yeah.
Third reason. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I thought finish your reasons. I just have a
third
point.
Reason is I wanted you to show that fight to see how intense it is, of like how fast that boss attacks, how wild those attacks are, and how many like perfect dodges you have to do, and like be very specific about when you attack and when you run, when you dodge, when you jump, when you can attack, when you can do charge attacks, etc. Because this game, like, it happened to me, and I've seen a lot of other people say the same thing. That the DLC is like a hyperbolic time chamber, that you make it through the DLC and suddenly you are just way better at all video games.
Yeah.
Because the amount of like precision that you have to get through those fights.
Yeah.
Really. You go back to other games, and like this is why Lies of P was my top moment. Is I went to Lies of P after the DLC,
and
that has like Sekiro parrying, like timed blocks, and I go back to the DLC and it's just like ping, ping, ping. Wow, this boss is really easy when you can't do damage to me. Like in my fight against that secret boss, I don't perfect parry all of his attacks, but maybe like a third of them in my successful attempt.
Yeah.
And that's still just like so much.
Yeah.
Like significantly reduces how much damage you take, and also like builds up a little bit of stagger and whatever. So yeah.
Yeah.
That, and then other games that I've also played where I go back to it and I'm just way better now.
Yeah. The Shadow of the Erdtree is a game I'm interested in, but probably am not even close to far enough in Elden Ring to play it. It's my whole thing with Soulsborne games is that I really enjoy playing them and I get semi good at them as I go, but I never get good enough that, you know, when the difficulty ramps up, I don't, you know, lose interest because I'm not good enough at it, and nor do I have the time to put into it. And I'm okay with that because I love the time I had before that with the game. The fun thing, the real dumb argument I heard, which was part of the little joke I made at the beginning, was I was listening to a Game of the Year podcast going, you know, the reason they didn't want to put Elden Ring on the list, it ended up going on the list anyway, it was like, you know, can you play Erdtree without opening another game? And I'm like, oh, that's kind of a like dumb argument for, you know, trying to keep a game off the list.
I mean,
yeah.
Like you have to open Elden Ring to be able to
play it. Yeah, is what he meant. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, but it was like, you know, it's if the game is significant enough, like I would even put early access into this. Hades could fall into this, but I left it off because I waited for 1.0 and stopped playing it this year. Once I got to the moment, the all the things I've heard about, you know, Erdtree and is a lot of things you echoed. Was that the game's difficulty was part of the reason it was such a good game. You know, this year was you just felt like when you beat the game, it was a huge accomplishment. Like you said, you felt like you were the best at video games ever after beating that boss. And I think that's what From does really well in those games. Is even for somebody that's like a mid to low skilled gamer in those type of games, and myself, seeing that you defeated or whatever is the term for that particular game, pop up on screen is just such a satisfying moment that knowing that they made these bosses much, much harder, and just can see the accomplishment from players that I know have a lot more skill than I do. It is definitely deserving to be on top 10 list this year. So anything else to add, Jonathan?
Nope. I ranted long enough.
All right. So my number 3, your number 1. Go ahead, Tom. Let's announce it.
Yes, it is. This should not come as a surprise to anyone, but it is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
Yes.
I've been waiting for this. I had been waiting for this game since I finished Remake. So in my opinion, it lived up to everything I had hoped it would be. I know a lot of people disliked the way they went about mini games and things like that, and there was too many side things or whatever. I loved all that stuff, and the best part about it was you didn't have to do any of it.
Yeah.
And if you got sick of something, you could just stop doing it, and it really wouldn't make that big of a difference to your playthrough of the game. And I was very happy with that. I love that they gave you the option to do all of these things. Like, I would have loved to get all of the Johnny things, and so I could like fill up his hotel. I just don't have time to do that.
Yeah, and there was a lot of them.
There was a lot.
Yeah, it's not like Indie where there's only 50 of those ancient, ruins things.
Right. There's hundreds.
Yeah.
And I was just like, you know what? I could sink all the time in the world into this and continue doing it, but I would like to finish the game.
Yeah.
Because I would want to do all that stuff before I finished it.
Yeah.
But I felt that it had a good amount of side content. I didn't mind like doing the same type of thing in each area, because that's any video game. You're gonna be going to a certain area and doing a certain type of thing to get through the story. But the exploration in this game was incredible.
Yeah.
I just love that you could just run around and you could find stuff and you didn't have to worry. Like, a lot of times I would just find things without having it on my map.
Yeah.
Or I wouldn't even bother opening the map. That was the best part. You could just wander with this amazing soundtrack and these beautiful visuals and these characters that you've known for so long, that everything is in this living world. It was quite an undertaking, and it really tugged at my heartstrings when I was playing the game.
Yeah, I feel that you obviously much higher in this game just because you are more of a fan of 7 than I am.
I have nostalgic goggles for sure. I know I understand that.
Yeah,
and I'm sure everybody else.
Yeah. That was the the point I was making. Why it's 3 on mine and 1 on yours is not so much that I think the quality of the game is less. I think going back, and I've watched some people play through it, there are parts that I forgot how good they were, and then there were other parts that weren't as good as I sort of remembered. The one thing I wish, and I don't know if I said this in the spoiler cast, because my opinion has sort of changed a little bit since that spoiler cast, and I don't remember what I said about the ending there. But going back on it and watching other people play through it, I kind of wish the ending wasn't as ambiguous as it was in terms of the big moment, you know, that happens there. Which, yeah, you know what I mean.
I think they had to be ambiguous.
Yeah.
Because I would imagine a lot of stuff is going to happen immediately in the next game.
Yeah.
And they had to be that ambiguous for a reason.
Yeah, yeah.
This is a Square game we're talking about. The same people make Kingdom Hearts, and
I see that.
Those games are ambiguity the game, so
yeah,
it doesn't surprise me.
I mean, this is also specifically the same team that made the Final Fantasy 13 games, which are games that are extremely lore heavy, and
yeah,
I saw somebody say that the Final Fantasy 13 games expect you to have seen the 2010 press briefing about the lore of Nebula Nova Crystallis. Because there's like stuff they talked about there that they never really elaborated on in any of the actually released stuff. But it's those people, it's the people who did that. Yes, to your point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just that was one thing looking back on it that my opinion maybe changed a little bit, and why it it was always below metaphor, but you know, it was one of 300-hour RPGs that I finished this year, and a fourth one that I'm currently 35 to 40 hours into. So it held my attention that long and didn't wear out its welcome to where I had to put it down and then come back to it or anything like that. So I did enjoy my time with it, and I think what it did really well, and this is more came from watching streams over the holidays, just when I put it on while playing NCAA, oddly enough, the game that is on screen right now, is that the way they actually gave some of the characters actual like personalities and stuff that they didn't really have in the original. Like somebody had a good discussion about Aerith, in the sense that while a lot of the personality, when you think about it, was made up, but obviously with it not being voice acted, was sort of made up by the people playing the game and how you interpreted the text and, you know, the things she said and stuff like that. And if you really just took it objectively and read it, that she was just a means to the end of what happens at the end of disc 1, you know, in that game, essentially. And I don't know if you were supposed to like get the attachment to one her throughout the whole game, sort of thing. I think Square was just thinking of her as just a character that they sort of build to a point and then take her away, and, you know, she'll just be part of the story.
She's supposed to be the love interest. I mean, there's an obvious love triangle, but she's supposed to be your love interest for the main part of first disc.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think, but in Rebirth, and I think in Remake more, you know, Britt Baron and Brianna White do a great job of actually giving them personalities and, you know, more interactions between them, you know, you know, and, you know, a better
instead of just being party members of people.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good way to put it, Tom. You know, it wasn't all focused on Cloud, like it is mainly, and RPGs at that time focused on the protagonist mostly. And I think that's really the great thing about this game, and I'm interested to see what they do in the third part, because it's more just building towards a finale than anything.
I'm interested to see how they handle what just happened.
Yeah.
Because there's clearly a disconnect between Cloud and the rest of the party. So, how quickly does Cloud lose his mind? How quickly do we get, you know, into that story?
Yeah.
When does Sephiroth show up? You know, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I have to say, before we move on.
Yep. I only have one final thing too.
The game's music is so good.
Yeah.
Everywhere is so good. I mean, Cosmo Canyon, the music in Cosmo Canyon is so good. I was really also surprised by how good the why am I drawing a blank? The place you hate, Gongaga.
Gongaga, yeah. I really don't like Gongaga.
The music in Gongaga was so good. I didn't care if I got lost. In the beginning, I did. I got lost quite a bit, but towards the end, I didn't care because I love the music so much that I didn't get frustrated looking for things.
Yeah.
About the music, really quick, I have seen a number of people put Rebirth as their game of the year, and one of the people said that or linked Gus's music as one that like really stood out to them.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Just so unusual for what you find in what you get in most video games, and just clearly the people working on the soundtrack got to a huge amount of freedom to just do like whatever they wanted to like represent these characters and places and stuff like that.
And my final point was going, off of what I was saying about the main cast is that they did a good job of making all the side characters also have personalities. And, when they didn't really have to. Like, they didn't have to go as hard as they did with Gus. Like, his arrival and all that as they did. They don't have to do all the stupid gags with Chadley. Like when he shows up in the Tonberry outfit in the prison. Like, they didn't have to do that stuff, and it still would have been great. And that was a lot. I think that's a lot more what I liked looking back on it. And the music is top tier. It would be if we were doing a music, best music. It'd be real close between this and Metaphor. The battle theme in Metaphor is just never got old, despite you would think it would, with the chanting and all. But the other music outside of the battle, I think Final Fantasy VII has, and is a really good year for music. And I think the main thing the best thing I can say about, well, not the best thing, but one thing that's always a huge thing on my checklist, and Persona 5 made this with its literal 120-hour, thing, is that I always looked forward to playing the game. Like, like the time when I stopped, it was because something stopped me. Whether it was like needing to go to sleep or needing to go do something, in my life, go out somewhere, go to work. Like there's a reason for me to stop. It wasn't like, it's the problem I've had with Infinite Wealth is that I've sometimes just stopped that game, and just be like, I'm good, and I don't know if that's so much I was playing indie at the same time, but, I have not pushed to finish that game like I did Rebirth. So, all right. So my number one.
Yeah. Let me just
go ahead. Finish.
I was not expecting to have that game last 120 hours. Like, I figured it was going to be a long game, but not once in that 120 hours did I feel like it was a slog.
Yeah.
Like, there was no point where I was like, man, this is taking forever. Well, I lied. There was one part in the game where I was like, this is unnecessary. That was the Kate Sith part.
Yeah.
But one part like that in 100 hours, I could deal with that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that obviously, mileage will vary. Some people, would bounce off real quick, or, lose interest as it goes. But
well, I mean, we've got someone on the podcast right now that did not enjoy it.
yeah, I wasn't.
I'm trying not to be a hater.
That's fine.
No,
on this podcast,
it's
but
fine. I know why you didn't like it. You told us why you didn't like it. It's fine.
Yeah, we get it, and that's not. That wasn't the point I was making. It was just, sometimes 120 hours is like, this game is definitely 80 to 100, or 6-hour speed run, which I'm currently have on pause on my YouTube that they just did at Games Done Quick. It's not going to be for everyone. And I think that's one of the main reasons that it didn't sell well, is the fact that I think you needed to play Remake to play this.
Yeah,
and that's why, like, I don't know if they were anticipating what they were anticipating sales-wise, but yeah. So
yeah, it's a second part of a trilogy. You have to play the first one in order to understand what the hell is going on in this one. So
yeah, exactly.
I mean, yeah, we talked about this a while ago, but I think another important piece to it is that Remake is a linear game that is entirely focused on combat, and this is a 120-hour game that is all about minigames. And like a lot of people really like those minigames and stuff, but it's a significant difference from what Remake was. And so like liking Remake does not in any way mean that you would like Rebirth.
That's true.
Or vice versa.
Yeah.
Which is makes it tricky.
I can't believe I didn't mention this though, but I really got into the battle system in this game. In Remake, I kind of just made it do whatever I wanted to do, press X to win or whatever it was, or whatever I think it was square, but whatever your attack button was. I really got into trying to stagger or trying to keep the stagger meter going, things like that I didn't really get all that into in Remake, like switching characters. I switched characters constantly in this game to try to see what worked best in a situation, and it's just I always like the when they compare it to a turn-based game. It is a turn-based battle system with action combat in between, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I know what you're saying with that. Yeah.
And I think it toes the line great between the original game and trying to make it action oriented.
Yeah. So Tom's.
That's all I'll say. I talked for way too long.
And there's also a 2-hour spoiler cast if you want to hear more. On our YouTube channel. So that's Tom's number 1, my number 3, and my number 1 game. And this happens every so often. I get to a game late in the year, and it becomes my personality for that entire time that it's out. And this year, my number 1 is Balatro. I have it on both PC and phone.
Man.
And I
knew this game was going to get you, Mark. I knew it.
And
I'm glad that you finally said it right.
Yeah.
On stream, you've been saying Blastro.
I've been practicing the whole time Tom's been talking, to be fair. So, as I've mentioned many times on stream here, this game has become my obsession since I downloaded it. I have beaten 5 decks through the ante on both the PC and my phone. And my goal is I'm going to do all decks first and then go back and play on the second difficulty on them all. What this game does, and it's the one itch that I never knew I had until Marvel Snap, or maybe in Inscription, was that I'm really into this type of card game. Because I've tried Hearthstone and Magic and all that, and I just and the Final Fantasy card games, some I like more, but for some reason these last 3 games that I played have completely taken over my life, and I don't know if it's probably a lot more simplistic than those other games, and that's why I can wrap my head around it a lot more. But just the sheer fact that I think when it clicked in my head that this was definitely going to be 1 or 2, and I think I mentioned this on a stream or on the News Hour when I was talking about as I was playing it. The moment it broke my brain in terms of poker, because I was playing it early on, like, just trying to find the best poker hands to try and play and win points. And when the meta, or however you want to say it, finally just clicked in my brain of how to actually play it, is when I just became obsessed. And, like, I, could figure out all the jokers, which have all the modifiers, and, figuring out what type of hand works best, outside of the ones that obviously say what hand gives you extra stuff. I'm figuring out all the spectral cards and trying to match them up with the jokers you have, and, getting all that. Once all that clicked, I just play it constantly. It's become the game when I need 10 minutes at work. Speaking of games you can play for 10 minutes that we mentioned earlier. I had sadly been playing way too much Monopoly Go to fill that time on my phone. That I'm glad I found another game, because I went from Marvel Snap to Monopoly Go to now Balatro.
I'm glad you found another game too, because my God, Monopoly Go is just a time sink.
Yeah, and I've not purchased anything in that game at all, and I'm level 2,900.
If you want to play a handheld card game, what you should try is the Game Boy Advance game, Chain of Memories.
Ooh, a Kingdom Hearts game.
Seriously, though, I think you should try it out. From what you were saying about the card games that you like, I think there's a good chance you would actually like it.
Yeah, and to just fill in on that.
Yeah, I need to try it too.
Yeah, and to just fill in on that about the inscription thing. Why you got people out there are probably thinking, well, that was just like 1/3 of that game. No, they released an endless mode where you could play the first card game endlessly, and I played that obsessively for at least 2 months, and beaten with all the difficulties and all that. It's really hard to describe how well, because I don't know much about game design, so I'm like speaking in very plain language in terms of whatever the developer did. It's something Thunk, right? Jonathan, can you help me out, dude?
No, I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, he has a name. Yeah, sorry. So I don't know, like
Local Funk.
There you go. Just the way the game keeps you wanting to do that one more run thing in it, because you never feel like, or at least I've never felt in the probably close to 100 hours at this point that I've played this game, you never feel like when you lose that it's like cheating. I can kind of see a run ending coming.
Never go, this is bullshit.
Yeah, I've never gotten to that, because I can see like, oh, I don't have enough multipliers to get to the number I need. This is just, and the game's numbers that you need are set. Outside of, there's one boss ante that's like double the points you normally need, and that's just one of 16 of them that does that. But everyone else, it says you can literally go on and see what the point thing is for each ante, all the way up till like you get to like some weird thing after 9, because you can go into endless mode and keep going after you get to 9, and it's some like power to the N or something. Like it's like I have no idea how you get up to those numbers. I struggle to make it to 20 million, but this game is simplistic's probably the wrong word, but it's just basically poker hands and figuring out, jokers and multipliers and stuff like that. There isn't some deep story to it like Inscription had,
Queen's Blood.
Or Queen's Blood. Queen's Blood would also go into that game. If they put Queen's Blood out, I would play Queen's Blood as obsessively. But yeah, the Balatro, my number one game. Obviously was not even on the list until like probably early December, when I finally bought it. This
buy that game.
Yeah. This falls into the category of what's that game called? Yeah, I forget the game, but there's a game that I've talked about a bunch that made my number one slot because I bought it for $7 in December on a PSN sale. And, you know, this fell into that category. This is the one I've been going back and forth on.
Is that the time travel game you were talking about?
Yeah, it's the one where you go in the boat and all that to the island. Yeah.
Can't think of it right now.
Yeah, I can't think of it either. But, yeah, because we've been podcasting a while here. But, yeah, I highly recommend it. My favorite joke about this game is that someone, I think it was on Blue Sky, or I don't think it was on a podcast, I think it was on Blue Sky. Someone said, yeah, it was like, the beginning of it was like, yeah, I gave my wife an addiction for Christmas. And then the photo was the Balatro on her Switch. And I'm just like, yep, that's exactly right. Because once you get hooked into it, you just want to keep playing it constantly. Yeah, and I'm glad that they made the iOS version came out right around when I bought it. So I got kind of lucky there. And the fun part is that combined, it was still like $20-something combined between buying the PC and the phone. So it wasn't like 2 full price games. So yeah, so that's my number one. If you're wondering out there, yes, college football did make my list, but it is not in the top 4.
That's my number 4.
But yeah, which is a game that I talk about how long I've played a lot of games. Apparently, according to Xbox and their year-end thing, I played NCAA for 196 hours last year.
That's a lot, Mark.
I don't know if I left it running at any point, but
No.
that probably not. But it just, I feel like to take a thing. I feel like when I was listening to Vinny Caravella over on Nextlander talk about that he looked at his hours in Satisfactory since 1.0 came out, and it was like 200 something hours, and he's like, that can't be right. That's no, someone left it on. That I didn't play 200 hours. So that's our game of the year podcast this year. So release schedule. If you want to check in on it, or you came in the middle and you want to check out the whole thing, the video version of this, along with the podcast version, will release on Tuesday. Just because of a lot of the CES stuff, I am going to do a news hour on Sunday, so that will release in the regularly scheduled Monday slot. And then my Game of the Year video, my top 10, that'll air on Wednesday. I'm going to give myself an extra day or so to do a little final touch-up and stuff like that with it, and now that I have some time. So, yeah, so that'll do it. Guys, heading into 2025, I know I haven't been able to look at the games released. I just know there's 2 games that are going to come up on the new segment I want to do on the stream, which is where I play the first couple hours of a new game on here and see if we want to keep playing it on stream or if I even want to keep playing it at all. And I think Avowed and Atomic Heart are the 2 Game Pass games coming out that are going to be one of the first ones on that list. So, yeah, it looks like we're free and clear in January and early February if you need to catch up on anything here going forward. So, yeah, I thank you guys for joining me. It's always fun to do these conversations here. Thank you, Jen, Roxy, for joining us for the opening segment. Hopefully, once we get our first podcast Prime under our belt, the gang will be all back together for that. So, thank you guys for joining me. It's fun as always. I will be back tomorrow night with the end of Eternights. And then Sunday with News Hour. Monday, we'll be playing our new game, which I will announce on Sunday. And then Tom, I guess, will be either finishing or going through a bunch of side quests in Chrono Trigger
We're going
Questing.
questing in Chrono Trigger.
On Thursday. So yeah, that was the fun part of that stream, was me scrolling on the guide and seeing it just say, "Oh, you can go fight Lavos and end the game now." And Tom going, "I wonder how much longer I got left." Like literally on the same stream. And I'm like, well, I'm gonna let him find out. So yeah, thank you guys, and I'm sort of vamping here a little bit because I always forget to double check the end screen to make sure that it's not just like some random game that I was playing. And then just keep an eye out. YouTube will be completely updated in terms of all the videos we've been playing. I'm going to try and keep it as up to date as possible. So that is a great thing to go and watch the VODs. So once again, thank you guys for joining me, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye, everybody.